welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. So quickly, our sponsors. We are proudly sponsored by Ugoku caps. You've seen me wearing them on the podcast. You can get the discount codes from me, send me a message. I'll send them to you. They're floating around. We're also sponsored by Phoenix head torches. Same thing goes. If you're after a discount code, just get in touch. There are there on the web, but if you want them personally from me, I will send them to you. And also, finally, we are proudly sponsored by Home Trails. So Home Trails is my YouTube series interviewing famous trail runners from hopefully around the world at some point. In the UK at the moment, where we interview them on the trail in the home trails. You understand what it is, don't you? You've listened to the show. That's hopefully turning into a bit of a brand, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Okay, on with the actual show. Okay, yes, we are recording. So welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast, Amy Hart.
Thank you so much for having me on.
There's no problem. So just for the viewer and the listener, so Amy was quite apprehensive at first about coming on because, as she sort of says in her own words, she's just a normal runner, just a normal person. It's not an ultra runner.
That's me, not an ultra runner.
But so I've already explained that, in the interests of variety, it's not just ultra runners that we interview. So you are a runner, and you've been a runner since 2020, haven't you? Was it?
Yeah, I mean, I started running just at the start of the COVID pandemic, so around 4 or 5 years ago now.
5 years, yeah. So traditionally, my opening question to sort of a new person coming on the show is that I like to do the superhero question. So I have pre-briefed you on this, so you weren't expecting it. So the superhero question obviously is that, all runners, ultra runners, or normal runners, as you class yourself as. We're all superheroes in one way or another. So all superheroes have an origin story or a backstory. So, Amy, what is your sort of superhero origin story? How did you sort of get into running and get to where you are now in running?
Wow, well, that is quite a big question to start with. I know you prepped me beforehand. I'm not sure if I consider myself a superhero, but obviously I'll give you a little bit of an overview about me. So I'm Amy. I'm originally from London, but I've been living in Liverpool on and off for like the last 8 years. Used to live between here and Crete. I wish that I ran when I lived in Crete because it's a lot nicer than Liverpool. But yeah, been lived in Liverpool on and off 8 years. I got into running quite late, to be honest. So around 4 or 5 years ago, at the start of the COVID pandemic, that's when I got into running. The reason why I got into running was probably like a lot of people, just wanted to get out of the house, really, and that's where I started.
Yeah, that was your sort of beginning. So you didn't have like a life-changing event where you thought, I've got to start running, and this is, or COVID was that life-changing event for you, was it?
Well, I won a Apple Watch at work, and that's honestly why I got into running. But a few years before this, I'd signed up for one of those Race for Life, through cancer research with my mum. And I was meant to be doing that. And I'd gone on holiday and decided actually I wasn't going to fly home, ended up staying in Crete. So I let my mum down and she basically went to that race and she really got into running. And I think like the years that passed over that, obviously my mum was running like 3-4 times a week. And it kind of inspired me to start running. And then obviously start of COVID, won an Apple Watch at work, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. So I did couch to 5K. I was so unfit, like literally couldn't run longer than 30 seconds without being out of breath. But for some reason, kept at it. I think it's like a 9-week program, and by the end I did the 5K, and since then I've just been running quite regularly.
And so what sort of distance are you up to now? You've run marathons, haven't you?
Yeah, so I previously ran London Marathon, done that in 2022, and I also done Manchester Marathon in 2023. And I'm also planning to run London Marathon next year.
Mm, yeah.
But
So
to be honest, my fitness levels right now probably aren't where they should be. And obviously, I've got a bit of time, before my next race and stuff. But I'm just plodding along at the moment.
plodding's good though.
I,
One of the things I sort of noticed about you is sort of your consistent with following you on Instagram, your consistency with running. You know you're always posting. I mean, it seems like every day you're posting about running. Is that
yeah.
something? Are you? What's your sort of like schedule like for running then?
So it's quite difficult at the moment. I've got two jobs. So I work in HR as my day job, not a Karen, I promise. On the side, I do social media management. So to be honest, life is really full on. But I know I say I'm plodding on. I actually have a running coach and he would kill me for saying that. Um, he would literally kill me for saying that. Um, but right now, life has been quite busy and I do struggle to fit it in. But I think because I'm quite disciplined, I still am running around 4 times a week. Probably not at the distance that I want to be doing, but obviously I'm following a plan and I will build up.
Mm. So is that something new to you then recently having a coach then?
Yeah, so it's someone on my Instagram. He's called Colin. We've obviously, been following each other for a while. And I was a bit hesitant to start with because, as at the start, I'm a normal runner. But I do like that he holds me accountable. And he's quite flexible with me as well because obviously some weeks are quite busy.
Mm. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I suppose having two jobs, you're going to be busy. Is the social media manager thing then? Is that something that have you always done that, or is that like a new thing that you've sort of been doing?
No, so I recently started that probably about 6, 7 months ago. And that's when my life started getting really busy. Prior to that, when, I just had one job, I could do a lot more. I've worked from home for a while, so I could always run at lunchtime. I had a lot more time. And if I'm being honest with you, I've noticed like the last couple of months, especially since having a second job, I am struggling to fit everything in. But obviously, I've got some races coming up, and that, and alongside my running coach, that is keeping me accountable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. How do you sort of balance things out then with obviously having two jobs is going to keep you busy. How do you balance that out with your training as far as like priorities and everything? Is it something that with the coach that is he putting things in place and you stick into it, or is there some negotiations going on?
Well, there's a lot of negotiations. So obviously, he's given me the plan, and I try and follow it to a T. But life does get in the way, and to be honest, I'm probably the worst client in the world because I kind of make my own rules up as I go along. But I'm at the same time, I am quite disciplined. So sometimes what I've noticed recently, I've been doing a lot of my runs on the treadmill. And for the first few years of my running journey, I was always against treadmill running, didn't really like it, preferred to go outside. But I've realized sometimes that's literally the only way I'm going to fit it in. So I think, although I've got quite a busy life, I'm very flexible. And I either get the running in the morning, or if I can't, then I'll do it on the evening. But I always aim for at least 3 to 4 runs a week.
Yeah, yeah. I know how you feel about treadmills. I still call them the dreadmill.
The treadmill. So do you run on a treadmill?
Occasionally, there was a time where I was forced to use a treadmill with the job that I had. I used to have to do quite a bit of offshore work, so I used to go away and stay away from home and go off, into the North Sea and everything. And basically, you're trapped on an oil rig. So the only choice you got for exercise is the gym, and all
Yeah,
of the gyms have got a couple of running machines in there that nobody seemed to go on. Just every time I went there was nobody on a running machine, and although it I didn't like doing it. It's more of a case of just, you got to do it. You've got to use it. So I kind of forced myself to do it. And I think the furthest I ever ran on a treadmill was probably about like 6 miles, something like that. I just
Really?
couldn't
Yeah.
couldn't take any more. I'd
See, I
rather.
did 12 miles on the treadmill the other month, and I was just like, what's wrong with me? Like, I literally felt like I was on a hamster, but sometimes you've just got to do what you've got to do. And I'm sure working offshore, that must have been really difficult.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was one of those things where you just I've got in such a routine of running for a long time that I was like, I can't face not running, and if it means just
Yeah.
going on a treadmill, then I'll take that. I'll take it because that's all I've got. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, haven't you?
I think as well, like, obviously now it's starting to get darker too.
Yeah,
Like, it's just more convenient sometimes.
yeah, that's true. Actually, that's something I thought we could talk about. So, as a female runner, is this time of year with it getting dark and stuff like that, how do you sort of feel about going out and pounding the pavement in the dark, and are you comfortable doing that? Is that something that bothers you?
If I'm being completely honest, no, I don't think I am comfortable with doing that. And I mean, I have gone for runs in the dark, but I have felt quite unsafe when I've done it. I've ran with my keys in between my hands, but I don't know what that's gonna do. Need some gas. Is it gas spray? Probably need that. No, not gas spray, pepper spray. Don't know if that's legal in this country. But yeah, no, jokes aside, no, I don't feel comfortable running in the dark. And I do avoid it. I think obviously, so I'm running London Marathon next year. And if I didn't have the treadmill, then I'd probably force myself to do it running outside. But I don't feel comfortable. I don't like it. People catcall, like it, I don't know. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Especially, I suppose, with London Marathon, with it always sort of traditionally being like in April time. So you've got to train through winter, haven't you? You've got to go
Yeah, of
all
course.
winter, and that's obviously like the worst possible time. Especially if you're doing road miles, it's yeah, it's not convenient. For for the likes of me and the kind of running I do, like lots of trail running, it's not really, and I'm a bloke as well, so it's not really an issue. Just sort of putting a head torch on and going out and not being bothered. But yeah, it's something that probably as me as a male doesn't appreciate. The kind of
Yeah.
things that you have to sort of go through just to get mileage in. Is that something that sort of could stress you out if you've got a big race approaching and you're just stressing about having to get miles in that way?
You mean in the context of the fact that I'll have to be running outside or fitting
If
in
you had to
time
be,
to.
yeah, if you had to be running outside.
I think if I had no choice but to run outside, I would just get on with it. But I do think because I do feel like this way right now, it does make me feel uncomfortable. And I know it's not right, and a lot of people say it's not, and it isn't. But I feel like it's the world that we live in now, and you do have to be really cautious. For example, I mean, I'm not really on Strava. I think I've got a Strava account, but my account must have stayed on because I kept getting emails saying, "Oh, someone's liked your run." So it must have been syncing my runs every time I was doing it. And
Mm.
then I went on the app and realized that people can actually see your location where you're setting off from. And obviously, I've updated the settings now, but even that, well, oh my God, like you just have to be really careful because I think especially like with having a little bit of a presence online as well, you don't really know who's watching you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that the setting you can change it, can't you? So that it hides your start and finish, doesn't it,
Yeah.
on Strava? Yeah, so that's something. Yeah, that's something I knew it existed, but obviously it's never been an issue. But I know some people are, not specifically women running. Some people just have it on. Some men have it on just because they don't want people to know where they live,
Yeah, of
basically.
course, for that reason.
And but like you say, you've got a very big social media following, haven't you? So is that something that does sort of play on your mind that there could be? It's not nice to think about, is it? But have you had those thoughts?
I mean, I personally, I wouldn't say that I've got a big following in comparison to other people, but obviously I'm at a point now on my account where you can't really control who's viewing what. And obviously I completely understand, it's my choice to document my running journey on there. But the fact that I can't control who's viewing things, and sometimes I'm very real on my social media, but I think sometimes people can think that they know you really well. And actually, like I said yesterday on my Instagram, social media is a highlight reel. And I think sometimes people can think that actually they know you, but they don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people have said this to me as well, sort of thing that, and I appreciate them saying it, that they listen to the podcast and they feel like they know me, and it's probably because I overshare about my
Like
life,
me.
about
Same.
things going on in my life and stuff, and I've had people talk to me at races and sort of ask me about something to do with one of my kids, and I'm like, and I'll laugh and talk about it, and then afterwards I was like, yeah, actually, I'm sharing a little too much at times. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I suppose that's the things you sort of got to sort of weigh up, haven't you? That it's great having like a big following and stuff, but you've also potentially there's a few crazy people out there, isn't there, on social media?
There is, but do you know what? That's just a few. Like, I love the online running community. In real life, I'm quite unsociable. Like, I'm not part of a running club. I do the majority of my runs on my own. So that's one of the things that I do love about Instagram. That obviously, I know it's just online. That might sound a bit sad, but it is a really great running
Mm.
community.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, you probably ought to end up being an ultra runner, to be honest. Then, if you like running on your own.
And do you know what? Never say never. I think I probably will end up doing an ultra. I'm not sure when, but I would like to at least do one in
Yeah.
my life.
Well, if you can run I've always said if you can run a marathon, then you can run a 50K because it's literally like an extra, what is it, like an extra 5 miles or something. So
Yeah, so I've heard with like ultra marathons and stuff, like you stop for food, and is that
yeah,
true?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it's
it's quite
great. Yeah.
funny because I mean, I've officially done two marathons, London and Manchester, but I did one unofficial marathon during COVID, which was basically just me and my mum. And I'm not sure if that can count because we literally stopped for like crumpets at our house like three times, and I don't think you're meant to do that.
That is basically an ultra. Yeah,
Really?
if you'd ran like 26.3
Yeah.
miles, stop three times for crumpets, that's basically an ultra.
I'm an ultra runner then.
Yeah, yeah, it's
How many
it's
have you done, Sam?
oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I've
Oh, really?
kind of
Wow.
lost count. Kind of lost count now. So I've been doing ultras since I think the first one I ever did was in 2012 or 2013. So I've been running sort of off and on, well, more on than off, since 2002, something like that. 2002.
Oh,
Showing my
wow.
showing my age now.
What year are we now? 24. Don't
So
even
yes,
know.
yeah. So I was so in my early 20s, I started running just like for, this is a subject we're going to get onto, for mental health reasons, because I'd gone through like a rough childhood. Here we go with the oversharing, but it's appropriate. So when I was 18, my dad died,
All right.
and that sort of sent me into like a bit of a like mental health sort of downward spiral, sort of in my late teens and into my early 20s, and sort of went off the rails. I was at home with my mum and my younger sister. She sort of did the same, went off the rails. My mum was obviously busy with her own grief, sort of thing, so it's kind of not left us to our own devices, but we were sort of she probably wasn't sort of watching what we were
Yeah.
too closely. And I'd sort of hit like a really like low point, and I was on antidepressants. And I'd basically gone to the doctors and sort of said, yeah, the antidepressants are, they work, and other people that have sort of had this experience themselves will probably sort of testify to this, that rather than they do work, but rather than sort of letting you have, it stops you from having the lows, but also stops you from having the highs as well. So it levels you out. And I
Yeah.
sort of said to him, I appreciate that they work, but I don't feel like I can get sort of excited and happy about things anymore. I don't get depressed, but and he sort of said, so he was a young doctor, and he sort of said, you're too young to sort of be stuck on these. How about sort of getting yourself off them and using exercise? Is there anything that you enjoy doing? And I was like, well, I like riding my bike, bit of mountain biking. At the time I was doing a bit of snowboarding and stuff. Always sort of been quite active. But at this point, I'd like stopped exercising. I'd lost my job. I was like piled a load of weight on and was like super overweight as well. And he was like, "Why don't you just try just starting with a bit of jogging and just see if it sort of helps lift your mood a little bit."
Yeah.
So that was the sort of the beginning of me sort of becoming a runner. And like you said, you you start off like only being able to run for like 30 seconds and then being out of breath. And I used to sort of literally run to a lamppost and turn around, and that's how I started.
So
So yeah, literally just like running down. So I lived at the top of a hill, so that wasn't. It was great running down the hill, but coming back up was difficult. So I just used to run, and eventually I could run down to the bottom of the hill, and turn around and then kind of run back up again, walk and run back up, and then slowly sort of pushed it out and went a bit further every time, and a bit further and a bit further. And sort of within a few months, I was running like 4 times a week. I was lifting weights again, and my sort of mental health started to sort of come under control, and I managed to wean myself off antidepressants.
oh,
Um,
amazing.
and that was the beginning of like my, not, I wouldn't say obsession with running, but at that point I realized that running was like meditation for me and was like medicine. So it was something that I could do of my own accord, and it would sort of give me mental clarity, and it would stop me from sort of spiraling into a deep depression. And from that point on, that was it. I was like, from now on, I will always be a runner. So
Yeah.
that was sort of like in, yeah, it's early 20s, sort of 21, 22. And I've stuck to that. That's always, I've always sort of been a runner since then. I may have had like little breaks where I've been injured and not been able to run, things like that. Injury is a thing that sort of plagued me a little bit over the years, but that's because of running too much because I enjoy it so much. Um,
Yeah.
so running for me has always been like medicine, and it's always been something that I've sort of turned to. And I know this was the main reason why I wanted to get you on the podcast. So I saw that a few weeks ago it was mental health. Was it like World Mental Health Day, wasn't it? I think was that last week. When was that, last week or the week before?
That was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, and you'd put a post on about mental health, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of get you on and talk about that. So you've heard my story.
What's mine?
What's your story with mental health and the charity work and stuff that you do?
So I'm very similar to you, Sam. Like for me, running is my therapy. I've struggled with my mental health probably like throughout my whole life. It's a hell of a lot better since I've got into running. But I mean, I had a little bit of a troubled childhood, went into care when I was 13, moving around, like just completely went off the rails. And I've not actually shared this before, but when I was younger, I did an overdose and I ended up in hospital. And just, I don't have victim mentality. Like, I'm so proud of my past. It makes me who I am today. But reflecting back when I was growing up, I did struggle a lot with my mental health. Anyway, when I got into running 4 or 5 years ago, I realized how good it actually was for me, and how much better I feel after every run. And it's quite funny because I mean, I say I love running and I do for the running benefits, but to be honest, half the time I don't even want to go for a run. Like, I don't want to go. But why I go is because I just know that feeling once you get into your run and then after that runner's high, nothing compares to that. And I also find it quite calming. Like, obviously, my life is quite chaotic, and that peace when you're going for a run. So I'm really, really passionate about mental health benefits for running. I'm running Miami half marathon in February, and that's with a charity called Still I Run. They are a US based charity, but they really promote like the benefits of running for your mental health. And that's something that I really align to. And yeah, I think more people should run for their mental health because, like you said, you know, of course, like I'm absolutely not saying there's anything wrong with medication, but you can go to the doctors and obviously get put on medication, and then that works for some people. But I think, like you said, if you were missing that, being able to, you know, enjoy the highs and stuff, running gives you that pleasure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think actually, you know, because of having that experience myself, my wife tells me off for sort of for trying to prescribe running to people. So if sort of people will say, I'm feeling a bit down and a bit depressed, and I'm like, she can see me itching to sort of say, have you tried running for 24 hours through the night?
Yeah.
Those kind of stupid things. Just because I know that it's something that has always sort of helped me massively. And I've tried other things, cycling doesn't quite do it for me. I do like cycling. I love paddleboarding, and paddleboarding is probably the only thing that probably would get me by. Um,
Really, that's really interesting because I've always wanted to try paddleboarding and
yeah,
I've never
sure.
done it.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah, you need to do it. It's because I think of that. The thing I love about trail running is sort of being out in nature and having the greenery around you, which is obviously, that's the thing that is one of the calming things about being out in nature. So paddleboarding is kind of like the next best thing to trail running, because where we go paddleboarding, it's often sort of in local rivers and lakes, and obviously like we're close to the Peak District, and the surroundings are perfect for paddleboarding. So it feels almost, and you're doing something physical, so it's good
Yeah.
for your mental health in that way, and it's a close second to trail running, but running will always be the thing that I always sort of, not that I use it as a crutch, but I suppose sometimes I do for my own mental health, just relying. So if I haven't been for a run for a few days, I try and run most days, and have one sort of, when I'm in full training, I'll run 6 days a week and have one day of
Wow.
rest. Um, but if I have like an extended period of rest, like a few days, I start to get a bit touchy, or if I've got to work or go away for work and I can't run, and I come home and I'm a bit sort of, itchy feet and a bit tetchy, the Kate, my wife, will be like, "Can you just go for a run? Just please, just."
No, literally, I was about to say the exact same to you because the flip side is running is great for your mental health, but when you when you've not gone for a run
Yeah.
for a week or whatever for various reasons, I'm the same. I get rangry, like I get so angry, and
Rangry.
it's like
I've not heard of that. Yeah, Rangry, yeah.
I'm the queen of cheese, runch rangry. But yeah, you do. I think if you're so used to running and then you can't go for a run, like it does mess with you, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because I suppose, yeah, it is like missing a therapy session, isn't it? So
Yeah.
when you rely on something so much, like missing a dose of it is going to affect you in that way. So this charity that you're involved with in America, then how did that sort of come about then? Did they reach out to you? Is that something you've been involved with?
Yeah, so I received an email from a company called Real Buzz, who work in collaboration with Still I Run. So that's how that came about for Miami half marathon. But I'm also, so I'm running London Marathon for the Children's Society. They do a lot of work with care leavers, and that's like quite something that I'm really passionate about, given my background. And when I ran London Marathon in 2022, I did it for the Children's Society then, and I've decided that I want to raise as much funds as possible for them again next year. So I'm actually fundraising twice at the moment.
We'll make sure we put all the links to your fundraising into the show notes and everything. Um, how come? So how did that experience then of yourself of being in care in foster care when you were younger? How has that sort of shaped the way that you sort of view the world?
I think it's had a really positive impact on the way I view the world now, because I think it's given me resilience, and I think I'm a very disciplined person because of it. And like I grew up in care, went to five secondary schools, left school with like no GCSEs. Probably statistically, I ended up in prison, potentially dead, or etc etc etc. Statistically I shouldn't have achieved anything, but do you know what? I said I'm not going to let my past define me, and I ended up going to uni, ended up getting a first class honours degree, ended up completely sorting out my life. And actually I think a lot to do with what I've achieved right now in my life is because of my background, because it's actually fueled me to want to do better. And one, like, I think because of my background as well, like when I'm running, maybe I'm a little bit hard on myself, but when I really get into it, I do want to keep pushing myself further and further, because I think I have that mentality that you shouldn't give up. Like, not going all David Goggins on you, but do you know what I mean? Like, I like pushing myself.
Yeah. So obviously there is that connection, isn't there, between that's like a well-known thing into the connection between like childhood trauma, having a bit, having a rough upbringing and endurance sports. There is like a massive connection there. I remember reading when I was in my cycling days, there was a guy that had sort of done a study on Tour de France riders,
Right.
and he'd gone back through all the records of Tour de France champions, and they'd all every single successful Tour de France rider had come from like a broken home or like had a troubled upbringing. That
Wow.
none of them had like both parents like married or together. Something traumatic had happened to them, and sort of with the interviews that I've been doing over the years, it's quite easy for me to sort of see the connection between people that have had like a colourful past and then they've found endurance sports and they've used that as coming back to this that expression of using it as a crutch, but it's not using it as therapy. So do you think that you were naturally drawn to running because of your sort of past trauma and everything?
Yeah, potentially, yeah. And I think because I do use it as a form of therapy, like when I go for runs and stuff, like I also have ADHD, so my mind is like all over all the time. I'm an oversharer, but when I run, it is my quiet time, but it is also a chance for me to, like think about things that are playing on my mind, and like build resolutions in my head and stuff. And obviously I'm just in my head while I'm running, but I do find it very therapeutic.
Mm. Yeah, I know. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember who it was and who said it, but they were saying that if they can't, if they've got a problem they're trying to sort out or an issue, and they go for a run, and if by the time they finish the run, if they can't come to a resolution, find an answer to the problem, there is no answer to the problem. That it can't be
Wow.
basically saying that that's how you sort out all your and I agree with that fully that if something's playing on your mind you go for a run and you it's funny how you can sort of that bit of time in nature or in this even like running down the road just gives you that mental clarity to be able to sort of think over something and play through something in your mind. And I sometimes like if I'm listening to music, but I've got something else on my mind, I will sort of pause the music just so I can sort of focus on the one thing that I'm thinking about and try and come to a resolution with that. So yeah, it's therapy, isn't it? Mm.
No, it is, and that's quite interesting. I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other week. I can't remember which one, but the guy was talking about how he now uses AI to almost like, so say if he's got like an idea, like something that he wants to break down or something that he wants to talk about, because platforms like chat GBT and stuff, because they have now like an audio function, he'll be like running along and like talking with this like AI machine, but then be giving him back responses and almost be having a conversation. It's really weird, but I guess it's quite similar.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I've not thought of that. I know I've heard sort of podcasters sort of talk about using AI to like feed it a load of information about a subject and then get it to sort of spit out like an explanation of it so that they can then use that to talk about that subject in the podcast in like an informative way rather than it being like a list of like things like some kind of medical study or some sports science study.
Yeah,
It like gives you the actually like spits out something that's quite easy to digest and explain to people. So yeah, I can understand how that would work. Yeah.
the future
Um,
of AI.
yeah, that's it. With the future, yeah, everybody's jobs are all going to be gone, aren't
Sure are.
they?
So, sorry, I was just going to say, so obviously you don't work offshore now, do you?
No, no, no.
No.
So now I'm still working engineering, but I sort of work I'm based at a place at like a workshop which is well, depending on which way I run, it's between 7.5 and 8 miles away.
Yeah.
So training for me, if I can, I will try and use all of my like commutes to do my running. So when I'm not in peak running form at the minute, but in years gone by when I've been sort of peaking for races and doing big races, I can run to work, and then run back and get all of basically get all my mileage in for the week
That's
just
perfect.
commuting to work. And the family don't miss me because I'm up early and out the door, and then if I come the short way back, then I'm home in an hour anyway. So that could be a commute that I'd be doing in a car, like traveling somewhere anyway. So yeah, it's perfect really. And then at weekends, I'm just like get up early and go somewhere if I'm going somewhere nice in the Peak District for a run, um, or get up early and do like try and do if I'm doing a long run, I'll get up really like super early and get done so that I'm back for when the family are getting up for breakfast, so I'm not
Yeah.
missed. But as long as I'm making coffee and pancakes on a Sunday morning, then everything's okay.
You just got to be back for pancakes. You're so lucky that you've got like the Peak District on your doorstep. It's gorgeous there.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about. So you travel quite a bit, don't you? I know you were sort of saying that the Instagram is like the highlight reel of your life, but it's great when you sort of see people traveling around. Is that something that your social media account has allowed you to do? Is that something that's tied in with that, or is it something you do for work or?
No, I mean I have gone on some trips through my social media, but I'm a little bit of a weirdo. Like, I said earlier, I'm a bit of a loner sometimes. I have friends, by the way. I'm just a bit, I like my own company. So I've gone to Budapest. I think that was last year, and then Vienna this year. And basically both times I've only been there for like 24 hours, but I do it because I like going for a run in the morning and running around the city. So I've started a little bit of a habit now with that. I'm going to Amsterdam next week for a conference, and my plan is when I'm there to go for a run because I think that's like the best way to be able to see the city.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. So when I was talking about doing the sort of offshore work that I used to do for this company I work for, I also sort of inherited a job I started working for a company, and all I was supposed to be doing was working in the UK, going to sites and looking at bits of
Yeah.
machinery and stuff. But unfortunately, this is me oversharing again about my life. But
No worries. Me too.
a guy that I was working with, who was the commissioning engineer. So he absolutely loved his job. So the company that we worked for, built bits of equipment for oil rigs and gas plants literally all over the world. And it was his job to go and commission these bits of machinery. So he absolutely loved his job. He was in his 50s, he was divorced, he lived on his own, and all he got to do was travel around the world, go to all these amazing places, and it was all like paid for by the company. So he absolutely loved his job. But
Living his
unfortunately,
best life.
he was living his best life, yeah. But unfortunately, this is where the story changes. Unfortunately, he suddenly died, which was
Oh,
like
right.
tragic. Um, but the upside, well, I say the upside of that, there wasn't an upside of it. The downside of it was that the only other person that knew enough to be able to do his job was me. So
Right.
although I'd been employed to sort of go and just fix machines around the country, suddenly I inherited all of his commissioning work, and I had to sort of go and travel to far off land, commission these bits of equipment. So I ended up going to like Thailand and South Korea. At one point, I had a visa to go to China, and I didn't go, and I was really annoyed
No
that I didn't
way.
go to China. Um, I went to all these Bolivia. I went to Bolivia. That was amazing. So although I didn't particularly like having to go and do that, I always made a point, like you say, of always trying to go for a run in wherever I was going. And I would always try and, so on Strava, it would be great because all of my mates would be like, "Where on earth are you? What, like
Where are you today?
yeah, you're literally
Timbuktu.
running. It looks like you're running in a desert in the middle of Bolivia." And I'm like, I am, because that's the only place I can go for a run. Um, and then so, but like you say, that I always think that if you're stuck somewhere, like if you're a tourist, you go and do things, but being like a running tourist is like on another level, isn't it? So if you can like put on your running shoes and if it's safe to go for a run, so there were some places where like when I went to Bolivia and I was running, basically it was like an impound, like a gated area where this bit of machinery was, and it had armed guards. So all the guards had like submachine guns because
Wow.
it was, it was quite a rough area even though it was in the middle of the desert. So I was running around this perimeter fence inside this compound with all these armed guards sort of watching me, like wondering what I was doing. Why was the crazy English guy running around in circles?
That's a runner. I love that. That's something I would do.
Well, that's commitment to the cause.
Of course.
But even like when I went to South Korea, their culture is very different, and I was running, so I was staying in like a city. And I went for a run, expecting to see other people running, and I didn't see any other person running. It
Really?
was so bizarre, yeah, really strange. So I was running, and everybody was like looking at me. Obviously, because I'm like at that point, I was like a blonde-haired white person running, in South Korea, and there was no other white people there. So I was getting funny looks. And then
That's really interesting that. So you didn't see a single runner?
no, not
Wow.
at all.
My
And
God.
I was there for 2 weeks. And I tried to run as much as I could, and I didn't see one other runner. I saw people on bikes, but they were mostly people sort of commuting to work and back. Yeah, it was quite strange. You
You
just
probably
assume,
thought, who's this weirdo running around?
yeah, yeah. You just assume that that every other city is the same, that everybody runs
Yeah.
in a city, but obviously not.
Well, at least you got your runs in.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the main thing. So obviously you've got this sort of, fairly sizable social media following. What is your sort of, have you thought about where you want to take that? How do you want that to serve you sort of in the future? If that grows, what do you want to get out of it, basically?
Well, to be honest with you, so when I set up my Instagram a couple of years ago, I just set it up to track my own runs and hold myself accountable. Like I never anticipated that it would grow. And I didn't really see it coming. Obviously now it has grown a little bit and I have had some incredible opportunities from it, but I'm probably the worst content creator in the world because I just post loads of random stuff on my profile. And I although I said at the start that Instagram is a highlight reel, which I still agree it is, I probably am a little bit of an oversharer as well. And if I'm having a bad day or I can't be asked going to the gym or going to a run, I'll share that on my Instagram. And to me, it's more like, I don't know if it's like a diary, but I'm just very normal on there. I don't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think probably that's probably why your account is probably so successful, that people can relate to the fact that you're just a normal person and that you're posting normal things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think sometimes, we get caught up in thinking that I mean, I do this as well, just thinking that everything that you put on there has got to be sort of, really curated, and it's got to be perfect, and everyone's got to have a good opinion of you. But most of the time, you just the stuff I end up watching on Instagram is just people putting on real things, like
Yeah,
what they're doing in the day, sort of thing, and going out for a run and taking the dog with them and tripping over, getting covered in mud and that kind of thing. Whereas, really the rules of social media should, almost like, is that what people want to see? But actually, it probably is what people want to see. People just want to see normal people doing normal things, and that's probably why people get inspired. Did you have people sort of getting in touch with you, sort of saying that what you do inspires them?
yeah, I do, and I also sometimes get people that message me and be like, "Oh, you're always on holiday," like thinking that I've got this amazing life, but the reality is I don't, and that's what helps me see it from another perspective, and that's why I follow someone on my Instagram, and they seem to struggle with their mental health, and comparing themselves to other people, and I sometimes I just wish people would realize that comparison is what's that saying? Comparison is the
Yeah,
thief of joy. Is that right?
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
I
Yeah, the
always get
thief of
tongue.
joy. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and I think it makes me sad when people must look at other people's profiles and think that they have this big incredible life, and it's not. I don't think it's the truth. It's not.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, everybody's normal, aren't they, at the end of the day? And some people are just better at hiding it, maybe.
Yeah. And it's what you're comfortable with sharing as well, isn't it? I think like you've said and I've said, we're oversharers, so we probably share a lot about when we are having a shit day. Like, sorry, mind my language, but I will share that as well because that's who I am.
Yeah, but I suppose that there are people that frustrate me on social media as well, because I think that, like, maybe like professional ultra runners and things like that, sort of in my area of expertise, kind of thing, where I think that they should sort of show more, because they do only put on very curated posts where they've like thought about what they're going to post, and it's just like one post every month or something like that. But people, they want to see, all the nitty gritty. They want to see them having a bad day. They want to see it, because you can sort of build up this opinion of a runner and think that, well, their training is all perfect, their life is great, yeah, the nutrition is always perfect, all the things that they need to do right, they always do right, and they never have any problems in the running. But that's kind of unrelatable, and I suppose it's fairly unmarketable, isn't it, as well as a brand, for.
Yeah, and it's not the case either. And I think people want to see your journey. They do want to see the highs and the lows. Like you said about the ultra runners that that just have like the perfect images. Like, I mean, I've never run an ultra marathon. You have, but obviously I have done marathon training. And the reality of marathon training is it's not all plain sailing at all. There's just as I swear to God. So I've obviously done 3 marathons, 2 official ones, but every time I marathon train, I always get to that point where I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, because it's so intense, isn't it? It's not plain sailing.
Yeah. Trying to carve out like 3 or 4 hours to do your like long run and stuff. It's not easy, is it? And it's in all the complications that go with that, like bad weather and and all the things that that can go wrong normally do go wrong, don't they, when you're training for something like that.
I know whether you haven't charged your watch or, and the thing is, when you're doing your long runs, when you're at that stage in your training, it's not actually just a long run. It's hyping yourself to get out the door. Then it's after when you come home, and like how you said earlier that you need to be home in time to make the pancakes for your family. But like I know from experience when I've done marathon training, sometimes like on a Sunday, I'm just completely written off.
Yeah.
Like,
Good for nothing, aren't you?
yeah, but I still love it.
Yeah, that's why we do it.
Of
Awesome.
course.
Um, right, I don't want to keep you any longer than we have to. I appreciate you coming on and sort of hearing a bit of your backstory and everything, and hearing all the great things you're doing with the charities and stuff. So make sure that you sort of um get those links over to me, and I'll put them in the show notes and stuff, and I'll post about them. Just make sure you get some lots of funds for those charities that are,
Oh, thank you
it's
so much.
mental health is something that's, I know it's something that's close to your heart, and it's obviously close to my heart as well with my experience and stuff. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about that. So for people to sort of follow you, and is it just your Instagram account, Amy Health Heart, into it?
Yeah, so on Instagram it's Amy Health Heart. I am on TikTok as well, but I don't really use it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not on TikTok. The kids have got TikTok on my phone, and they use,
Oh, really?
yeah, because
What's your algorithm like?
yeah, they've been banned from having it on their own phones, so they like
Oh,
sneakily get it, and I'll tell them like, I don't want it on my phone because I don't want the notifications coming up because I don't use it.
yeah,
So I delete it, and then suddenly like I get these notifications from TikTok, and I'm like, I've deleted TikTok. Why is it there again? And they've
they've
like snuck my
re-downloaded
phone
it.
and put it back on again. Yeah, teenage daughters.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Thank you.
thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on Amy, and sharing your story. And I know you sort of said that you're only a normal runner, but we're all runners, aren't we? So appreciate you sharing your
Oh,
story.
thank you.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. Bye, everyone.